Thanks so much for coming. So what you're going to hear today is 20 brand new pieces that nobody has ever heard before. I'm giving the world premiere of all 20 of them at Carnegie Hall in October, and then I'm taking it on tour. I'm booking concerts all over the place. But I needed some practice, but I still wanted to call Carnegie the world premiere. So I'm doing a couple concerts like this, and every single piece is composed by a composer I know. And I asked them to pick a painting that I own. I've been collecting art for, 20 years or something. So I'm going to show the art on this screen here. And at Carnegie Hall and other concerts, it's going to be projected really big, and they're going to be moving by this designer in New York City. So there are programs, I hope you got them. On the back there's a bio about me if you want to read about it. And you're probably going to have questions, but let's wait till afterwards because the program is too long.
Where are the programs?
Right over here. I got a little overzealous asking all the composers I know to write pieces for me. And a few of them wrote pieces longer than they were supposed to. So it's a little on the long side. That's not what I was supposed to show you. That's a funny comic. Here we go.
I'm sure that won't happen in front of you.
That won't happen very well. Okay, so first piece is by Shinji Ishima. He is a San Francisco composer and bass player. He plays with the San Francisco Opera and Ballet, and that's how I know him. And he wrote this piece for me called The Collection, and it's inspired by this portrait of me. Now, if any of you are thinking of commissioning a portrait of yourselves, really think about it. Because this thing's life-size, and I have to look at myself every day. And it took about a year before I grew to like it. This is by Paul Gibson. He's a San Francisco artist.
He's a friend of mine.
And what's that?
I know Paul.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Wonderful. And he's become a great friend, but he painted me looking really serious. And I showed it to one of my students when I first got it. And I said, I look kind of mean, don't I? And she said, no, that's not your mean face. So, anyway, it's mixed media. The title of the work is Dan Flanagan #2. He's painted me about 8 times now. It's acrylic and collage and graphite, and there are brass screws, and it's on gator board. And he did that for me in 2019. This piece by Shinji Ishima is called The Collection, and it's supposed to be about me and my collection of art. And it's also a collection of violinistic techniques, so you sort of pair the two together. So here is The Collection. Now that I'm tuned. pandemic hit, and we were all sitting on our couches, twiddling our thumbs, watching Netflix, feeling really miserable. I had this feeling like I've been preparing for that moment all my life. I had this little apartment on Solano Avenue with rent control and about 100 paintings on the walls. So I got to sit home and enjoy my paintings. And you know, musicians were used to playing with other people and nobody could for like a year. And we do it now, of course, but it was just me alone with my violin, and I kind of liked it. It reminded me of being in school when I practiced 8 hours a day. So I started making YouTube videos talking about the art on my walls and playing Bach, and I decided to start commissioning composers. And it was kind of an inevitable result of sitting around at home. Did anybody like get on Facebook and look up old friends that you hadn't talked to in a long time? I did a lot of that, and I found my high school music theory teacher. And her name is Linda Marcel, and I studied with her when I was 15 in New Jersey, and she wrote a piece for me too, and that's what you're going to hear next. It's called Raven's Dance, and it's inspired by this oil painting by Nina Fabunmi. And like Paul Gibson, Nina is a San Francisco artist. They both have studios at Hunters Point Shipyard Artists, which is actually the biggest collection of artist studios in the country. If you haven't been there, you gotta go check it out. They do these incredible open studio events. There's one coming up in October, and I always love going there. So she wrote this piece for me, and the painting, it's called In the Shallows. It's an oil on canvas from 2019, and it's pretty small. It's like that. It's in my bathroom over the sink. I look at it while I'm brushing my teeth. And the piece is sort of a day in the life of a raven, okay? And it's weird, and it's awkward, and a lot of it's supposed to mimic what a raven looks like when it tries to walk. You know what I mean? You're gonna hear some weird extended techniques where I'm imitating a crow cawing. And if it seems funny to you, then I did it right, okay? Here's Raven's Dance by Linda Marcel. feel free to take pictures if you want. Just don't use a flash because it'll distract me and I'll make a mistake. But please don't take any videos. The reason why is these pieces are under copyright and I have agreements with the publishers and like I have to pay to put them online. So if you put it online, I'll get sued. Okay, but feel free to take photos and if you want to put any of those online, just, I don't know, tag me or something like that. Okay, next we have a piece by my high school friend, Michael Panther. We went to school in New Jersey together, and we played in the marching band and the jazz band in the high school, and we stayed in touch. He lives in San Diego now, and this is his first time writing a piece for violin or even in the classical music idiom, and I loved it so much that I've included it. And this is already recorded and on YouTube, so you can go and watch it anytime you want. He also picked a painting by Paul Gibson. It's right here. It's called Abstract White. It's from 2010. It's like that big. And this is a gift from Paul. I went to his house once and I liked it and he just gave it to me. And his paintings are expensive, I found out. So Michael intentionally chose an abstract painting because he wanted it to be open to interpretation. You know, you look at it different times from different perspectives, it means something different to you. And what he wrote is sort of a Baroque sounding piece of music. It's very, very tonal. It doesn't take chances or experiment with anything. And you're going to hear little melodies that sort of evolve and then come back. And it's very, very pretty. And the whole thing just sort of feels like a warm beige brown to me. I feel like it fits. So here's Oil on Canvas by Michael Panther. on YouTube, and I took all this film around Hunter's Point with all the decaying shipyard buildings, and then through the artist studios, and I made the video in Paul's studio. So I like it. I think it's fun. Okay, now we have a piece by Jacques Desjardins. He teaches at San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and he's, I think, artistic administrator or something like that for Opera Parallel. I used to play concertmaster for Opera Parallel, and we do brand new operas, chamber operas. And I like Jacques and I like his music, so I asked him to write me a piece. And he chose this painting by Susan Bostrom Wong. She's a San Francisco artist. And I picked this up at an auction for the UCSF Alliance Health Project. So it's a good thing to support if you guys think of that. The painting is called Stepping Out. It's an oil on canvas from 2009. It's 11 by 14. Also like that, it hangs in my living room. And it's from her Emergence series. And that's what Jacques liked. He liked how it's this mysterious figure emerging out of the blue and the red. And you don't know what she's doing. I mean, it's kind of terrifying in some ways. It's also very, very beautiful, very mysterious. So he named his piece Emergence because he's French. And he put the accent there, and he insisted I say it with the French pronunciation. You know how the French are. I'm French. My grandmother, her French accent got stronger and stronger and stronger every year that she was alive. Okay, so what you're going to hear in this is some extended techniques and the sound sort of emerging out of nothing and then receding back into nothing and emerging back out again. And it sort of does this several different ways. So that's what Jacques has captured. for something completely different. We got some blues. But first I have to tell you a story. So I have this penchant for destroying instruments. I don't know why, it's cathartic or something. And I get a hold of damaged instruments that kids at schools already destroyed beyond repair. And then I smash them in funny ways. Sometimes I write pieces about it. I think it's a lot of fun. So I got this cello. It came from a middle school in Sacramento, and it was already damaged way beyond repair. I mean, this is like a $10 cello, and it would cost $800 to bring it back to playability. I saved it from the dump, and I made art, okay? So I'm up on my roof. I live on the 4th story, and I held the thing together, and I played the Swan really bad. This is the first time I've ever played the cello, and every cello student learns the Swan. It goes like this. It's gorgeous. I played it terribly, and then I threw it off my roof, and it landed on Solano Avenue. And I had 10 camera people filming it from different angles. This is at 1 in the morning, we stopped traffic. I mean, it was like early pandemic, nobody was out, you know. It was and then I hired a friend of mine, Mike Graham, who's a fabulous cellist, and he recorded the Swan beautifully. And I made this video where you see it falling in slow motion and smashing from different angles over and over and over again while the Swan plays beautifully. Okay? It's on YouTube, just search Cello Chuck and you'll find it. I then took the wreckage and I brought it to a sculptor in San Francisco, Sean O'Donnell, and he made this lady. It's called Allegro Non Trollop, and it's installed on my ceiling, and it's got blue lights that like blink all over the place. And this is one of the few pieces where the composer I got didn't have a choice of what piece he was going to, painting. I asked Evan Price to write me something to go with this. Evan is, in my opinion, the greatest living jazz violinist. He's like, Stefan Grappelli, only cleaner. And he won Grammys in the Turtle Island Quartet. And if you've seen any gypsy swing jazz in the Bay Area, he's playing. He's outstanding. So he wrote this piece for me, and it's titled Blue Swan. And you're going to hear the piece by Saint-Saëns, the Swan, quoted all over the place. Almost the whole thing is based on it, only it's a blues. So here's Blue Swan by Evan Price. coming CD. It'll feature about half of these pieces. Unfortunately, there's a limit to how much music you can put on CD. But when it's available to purchase, I'll let you all know. Yeah, I'm going to record that in 2 days. And this piece I'm going to play now, I'm recording tomorrow. So this next piece is by Trevor Weston, and he's a New York composer. He teaches in the pre-college at Juilliard, and he's chair of the music department at Drew University in New Jersey. And he actually did his PhD here at UC Berkeley. But my late friend, Michael Morgan, introduced me to him. He was the conductor of the Oakland Symphony for a long time. And Trevor wrote this piece called Notre-Dame au milieu de l'eau et du ciel. And the reason why he picked this painting of Notre-Dame Cathedral by Albert-Marie Leborg is because he also studied in Paris, and he lived close to it. And everywhere he walked in Paris, he felt like he could see the cathedral just in the, the distance. So this painting itself is really dreamy. I mean, this guy Leborg, he was in the Impressionist exhibits in the 1870s and 80s, okay? And so you're going to hear this dream-like thing of memories coming from Trevor. The opening is all about the sky, and you're going to hear this sort of rhythmic figure that's supposed to go with the brush strokes in the sky there. And then it goes to the water, and you're going to hear sort of a gentle rumbling like the flow of the water. And then it goes to the cathedral, where you're going to hear some chimes, you're going to hear a medieval hymn, Ave Maris Stella. You're going to hear quotes from Perotin and Leonin, who were in the first Notre Dame school in the 12th century. And Jonathan's the only one here who knows those names. We have one of the Bay Area's finest conductors right here, by the way, making me nervous. And then the rhythmic stuff comes back, and then it just sort of disappears into the distance. And Trevor also studied with Dutilleux, so you're going to hear some poking out stuff the way Dutilleux used to it. And actually, he just won this big competition, and he's writing a piece for San Francisco Symphony, which will be premiered just a few days before I premiere this piece in Carnegie Hall. Okay. I played this for him over Zoom, he acknowledged that he's a weirdo. Okay, now we have a piece by a composition teacher at UC Berkeley, Cindy Cox. She was chair of the whole music department for a while. She chose this painting by Victoria Vidal, who's a San Francisco artist. The painting, it's an oil on canvas, and it's 8 by 8, and I bought it at Art Gallery in San Francisco. They do this thing where they commission 16 artists each year to do 16 small works in a series. They call it their Four Squared exhibit. So that's what this is. It's titled Into the Light, and that's the title of the piece also. Cindy liked it because she was just drawn to these deep purples and blues. She loved that. So most of the piece, you're going to hear sort of this indulgent low G string, A flats and Cs that kind of feel like those colors. And then at the end, you're going to hear it just sort of trickle away into nothingness, which is, you know, the sound going into the light. So strange. Okay, another piece by UC Berkeley composer. This is by Maya Hinnanen. She just finished her PhD, and she's in Finland. She's back in Finland now. I asked her to write a piece for me because I like her music. And she chose this abstract painting by Elaine Pratt. Elaine is also a San Francisco artist, and this is also a very small acrylic on canvas. And Elaine's kind of a big deal in the graphic design world, but as an oil painter, it's sort of a new thing. So that's why I can afford her art. So the painting is actually called Island, and it's basically you're flying over an island and looking down, and that's what you see. So the piece of music is also called Island, and this is definitely the weirdest piece on the program. It's very experimental. It's the type of stuff you hear at like liberal college campuses, okay? And I think it's really cool. So what she tried to convey is just all the sparkly stuff that you see all over here. So the whole piece is just extended techniques, you know, not traditional sounds. And you're gonna hear weird harmonics and fuzzy sounds, and little by little the piece is gonna get busier and busier and busier in the middle as you go over this stuff, and then it sort of fades back into these surfacey colors. So next is the first piece that I commissioned. It's by Nathaniel Stuckey. He's a San Francisco composer, and you probably heard his music before. San Francisco Symphony plays it a lot. I first met him in the Berkeley Symphony. We were playing his music, and I got to know him more recently. Jonathan has conducted his music. I got to know him recently because his son Milton was my student at UC Berkeley. I teach violin there. So he's the first composer I asked, and he had time, and he wrote it right away. And he chose this painting by Rachel Dwan, who's a San Francisco artist. Now, he didn't even know what her name was, but he chose this painting not knowing she lived 2 blocks from him. And they're friends now. So the painting, it's oil on canvas, it's 36 by 36, and it's called Shadow Breaking, and that's what the piece is. He chose it because he says it evokes the quiet and often solitary struggle to find light in periods of darkness. Keep in mind, this was like 2 years ago. You know what I mean? already on YouTube, by the way, but it has never been performed for an audience. Well, except you guys and a couple of my friends. But like publicly, we'll get it premiere at Carnegie. Okay. Now we got a piece by the worst composer on the program. That's me. And I bought this little sculpture here. As you can see, it is an Eiffel Tower. And inside there's a little crystal pyramid that you see at the Louvre. And it's made out of an antique metronome. And it's made by Sean O'Donnell, the same guy who did the cello sculpture. And he was commissioned by Art Gallery for their Four Squared exhibit to do 16 sculptures. So he did 16 sculptures out of antique metronomes. Okay? And I thought it was really cool, so I wrote a piece and I recorded it in their gallery with all the metronomes clicking away. So this is sort of the audience participation part of the program. If you're a musician and you've got a metronome app on your phone, feel free to turn it on. In fact, please do turn it on. And when I go play this at universities, there are lots of students, we're going to have metronomes clicking all over the place. If you don't have that, but you want to join in, you're welcome to throw in a random snap here. So I brought a few other metronomes, and we're going to have them clicking away while I play this piece. So this is my Rhapsody in Discomfort number 5. There are 6 Rhapsodies in Discomfort in all. This is number 5, and it's titled Timeless. This one's pushed
Hands
out.
cut out.
You know, they're like 80, 100 years old, so. This actually belongs to my girlfriend. I didn't buy it for myself, so this is really the only piece on the program that isn't based on a work of art that I own. Okay, last piece on the first half of the program. We're gonna take a 20-minute intermission after this. And I'm not gonna hang out because I'm gonna practice for the second half. But after the concert, I look forward to talking to all of you. If you have any questions about this stuff, you let me know. There's business cards. You know, follow me online, sign up for my mailing list. I'll let you know about concerts that are happening. There's also a way you can donate. I have fiscal sponsorship from Intermusic SF, which means you get a tax deduction. If you have money you need to launder, you can support this project. It helps to pay the composers, it pays to have the recording made, it pays my travel. I'm performing this in Rome, in Perugia, in New York, in Boston, in a few places in Texas, Los Angeles, Chicago, Paris, London, Berkeley. That's the cheapest one to get to. Okay, this is a piece by Jim Stevenson. He's kind of a big deal. He's in Chicago. If you watched the Biden inauguration and you heard his fanfare for democracy, his stuff has been played by all the major orchestras. We just played a piece of his at the ballet called Wooden Dimes. And I had to ask him about 8 times to write a piece for me, but he finally did. And I worked with him about 10 years ago in Modesto. He came to conduct there, and I used to be concertmaster, so I got to know him and became friends. So he chose this pastel drawing by Armand Guillaumin, who was one of the impressionists in France in the 1870s and 80s. And you can see one of his oil paintings at the Legion of Honor. I can't afford those, but a pastel drawing I can get. I got that in Paris. So this is basically about a peasant dance that's going on outside the barn. And you're gonna hear lots of fiddle music, and the fiddler, or somebody, gets curious about what's upstairs and what that ladder is leading to. So he climbs up the ladder, and you're gonna hear me climb up the fingerboard. And when he gets up there, he sees something really disturbing. We don't know what it is, but it reminds him of something traumatic from his childhood, and he goes into sort of a dream of terror and discomfort. It's a great way to end the first half, right? And while he's stuck in this dream, you hear some fiddle music from a distance, little by little creep in, and then you hear him climb back down the ladder and join the dance. And the dance gets faster and faster and faster and crazier, and you learn that his terrible nightmare and the dance are somehow intertwined. new music ensembles. He's a clarinetist and a guitarist, and it's kind of interesting. He pretty much exclusively plays new music, which is really interesting. He teaches clarinet at UC Berkeley, so I know him from there, and we played in a lot of ensembles together. I asked him to write a piece for me, and it's inspired by this painting by Peter Canty. If this looks familiar to you, it's because you've driven along Solano Avenue. You know that Art Thou gallery that's across from the Safeway? And it's got all the big paintings of trees and ocean scenes? That's this guy, that's where I got it. He lives in the Berkeley Hills. From what I understand, he's quite old now. I have not met him, even though I'd love to. And he paints all these sort of California landscapes from his imagination. And Peter wrote this piece, Same Old Sadness. It really has nothing to do with the painting. What he did was the colors, like after he looked at it, the colors on the bottom sort of sat with him as fall colors. And the more he thought of the painting, the more it reminded him of, you know, when autumn moves into winter and the days get shorter and it feels a little bit sad. And it's the same time, the same thing every year. So it's the same old sadness. And you're going to hear this huge spectrum of violin volume, more than the other pieces, where you have these quiet, wispy little things with just one or two hairs. And I like to think of that as the wind in the trees, and then full, saturated, thick oil paint sound. So here's Same Old Sadness. actually the second piece I've commissioned of Peter's, and I can't even count how many I've actually performed. But the first time I played his music was with this man over here conducting. It just dawned on me. In UC Santa Cruz, maybe 10 years ago? And that was a 1-hour chamber oratorio inspired by an artist and a bunch of paintings that they have in their gallery there. Okay, so we have a piece now by Edmund Campion. He teaches composition at UC Berkeley. And he chose this pastel drawing. It's pretty big. It's not quite as big as what you're seeing here, but it's close. And this is by the third son of Camille Pissarro. Many of you have probably heard of Camille Pissarro. He's pretty much the father of Impressionism, you know. And I'm obsessed with him and his whole family. He had a bunch of kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, and most of them were artists. So I started collecting stuff from the whole family. And right here, I actually have a little drawing of hens and baskets of laundry by Camille Pissarro. So you're welcome to come take a look at this after the concert. So this is a pastel. Might remind you of Toulouse-Lautrec. They were friends. They painted the dancers and the nightlife and the Montmartre section of Paris together. Now Ed Campion chose it, and his piece sounds nothing like what this looks like. It's not even close to the same style. That's not the point. He thought of her splits. The drawing is called Le Grand Écart, which means splits. And it made him think of a few things that he wanted to do here. The first was a big split between the 19th century virtuoso romantic violinist and today's technically proficient violinist who can play in all sorts of styles. And he thought of this as a gigantic gap. He also thought of the registers of the violin. So what you're going to hear is sort of this minimalist thing of chords jumping up and down, lower, higher, lower, higher, lower, higher, lower, higher. And it's going to drive you insane. It's been driving me insane for like a year. It's actually my girlfriend's favorite piece on the program. It starts a little more on the romantic side, and little by little becomes more and more like a 21st century machine. Here's the splits by Ed Campion. last note of her. Next we have a piece by Jessica Mays. She is the director of the Very Young Composers Project at the New York Philharmonic. And she chose a painting by Albert Mallet. I need to put on my stand light here because it's starting to get dark. 1 second. Okay. So Le Bourg, the guy who did the Notre Dame Cathedral, he is from the Rouen School, which is a city in Normandy. And he taught an artist who I'm going to play a piece by at the end. And then he taught this artist, Albert Mallet, who's from the Rouen School about 100 years later. This painting is maybe from the 60s or the 70s, 1960s or 70s. It's called Path in Winter Sunset. It's about that big. It's an oil on board. And she liked this because it captures a winter evening near woods, just after sunset, obviously, but it reminded her of her favorite Robert Frost poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And it's about a traveler who's, going someplace and stops to take in the sights, but has to keep going. And there are all sorts of implications with the snow and the cold, with death and life and all that stuff. So it's titled And Miles to Go, which is from the last line of the poem. And you're going to hear snowy, cold stuff in the sound. That's sort of the point. she's a member of the New York Composer Circle, and she got me involved with them. And several of those composers have written pieces for me. And this next one is one of them. Her name is Catherine Neville. She lives on Long Island. And she chose this painting by Paul Emile Pizarro. That was supposed to be funny, by the way. We haven't got it long time. So this is a painting by Paul Emile Pizarro. He's the 5th and youngest child of Emile Pizarro. And it's called Home Guard Normandy Forest. It's an oil on board from about 1970, 12 by 15 inches. And she likes it because it's a dreamlike reflection of happier times, and that's what this piece is. So you're going to hear sort of a slow chorale and harmonics that keeps coming back for the whole thing, interspersed with dancing, cheerful stuff. So if you want to hear it again, it's available for streaming. You can buy the CD if any of you still buy CDs. Okay, now we have a piece by Emily Underdog. She is a local violist and composer. She lives over on Sacramento Street, right by the Monterey Market. And I know her because she's the principal violist of the Sacramento Philharmonic. I'm concertmaster there. We've been playing together for 17 years. You may have seen her perform. She was a member of the Quartet San Francisco, and they got some Grammys and won some tango competitions and stuff like that. And now she has a group called Vitamin N, which mostly does her own compositions and arrangements. Lots of fusion-y type stuff. Now her favorite thing is like 70s funk and fusion, and that's what you're gonna hear in this. She chose this work by Carrington Arredondo. She's a San Francisco artist. She's married to Sean O'Donnell, the guy who did the cello sculpture that's on my ceiling. And this is mixed media. It's about this size. It's called Graphica Primitiva. It's from 2016. And it's a mixed media collage. There's some paint, there's some newspaper, there's all sorts of stuff. What you're going to hear is a slow, thoughtful introduction, and then a middle section that's back and forth between these long lyrical lines that are supposed to resemble these long patches like this. And then funky repeated rhythmic gestures which sound really busy, kind of like this. And that's what's going on with this piece. And then it ends with a nice little cadenza. So this is Emily Underdog's piece, Arredondo. district director of the New York Composers Circle, David Machonis. And he chose this painting by Jean-Louis Forain, who was in all the Impressionist exhibits. He was close friends with Degas, apparently an anti-Semite. That sucks. But he made some nice paintings. So this is about the size of it, and it's called Couple in Bed. Now the reason why David picks this is you look at it, you don't really know what's going on. Here's a guy sleeping, he looks happy, she's getting up out of bed. Is this a dream? Is she getting up to leave him? Is she his prostitute? He painted lots of nightlife in Paris. He painted prostitutes, he painted dancers. Is she just getting up to go pee in the middle of the night? I mean, we really don't know. But it's not a very happy scene. That we're sure of, you know. There's some undercurrent of something. So that's what David wanted to capture here. And he titled his piece, An Expression of an Impression. So the piece sounds very expressionistic. For you music nerds, think Baird, Webern, Schoenberg. And you're gonna hear a basic, uncomfortable theme in the beginning that just gets played with throughout. And basically creates the feeling that you might have when you try to figure out where she's going. almost there. Now another piece by the worst composer on the program, me. It's called Monterey Sentinels, and it's inspired by this painting by Joaquin Turner. He's got a gallery in Carmel. He's part of the Carmel Art Association. And I just walked into his gallery and I loved his art, so I followed him for a couple of years until The Right Thing came along. And a couple of years ago, I saw The Right Thing that he posted online, and I went in to buy it, and in person, I didn't love it as much, but this was right next to it, and that was it. So he finds 100-year-old frames and paints, Monterey landscapes to fit in it. He also sells California tonalist paintings from 100 years ago in the same style. So that's what he does. What I tried to do with this piece is create the mood of how that makes me feel. There's nothing particularly profound happening in my piece. You're going to hear the wind in the trees in the beginning, and then your attention sort of crawls down the trees and gets into the ocean, and you're going to hear rumbling ocean stuff. And if you hear a little bit of Smetana's The Moldau, I admit, I ripped him off a little. And then it climbs back up the trees, and it ends up in the leaves again. I played this for my mom a couple days ago, and I didn't tell her the story behind it. She said she was hearing raindrops throughout the whole thing, and then a storm in the middle. And I said, yeah, I'll take that. So here's Monterey Sentinels. rounding it out. The marathon is almost finished. 2 more. This is a piece by Libby Larsen, who's arguably the most famous and important female composer in the country. Likely the most performed composer in the country. Jonathan and I did one of her operas a few years ago at West Edge. It was Frankenstein, and it was really, really cool. I first worked with her 15 years ago. We premiered her opera Every Man Jack in Sonoma and recorded it, and it was about Jack London. And it was really cool. It ended with all the singers around the auditorium howling. So I asked her to write a piece for me, and I was thrilled. She said yes. She chose this painting by Nikki Vismara. Nikki, it's a little whited out up here. Anyway, it's an acrylic on canvas. It's a little bit bigger than what you're seeing here. It's in my living room. And she's a Hunter's Point artist also. And this is called SFHP4, San Francisco Hunters Point Shipyard. And to her, this is the water. You know, she's looking at the water there all the time. And when Libby accepted this, first of all, she wants to be paid with a painting by this artist, which is incredibly cool. It took her forever to write this piece, just forever. For a while, I thought maybe she wasn't going to write it. And then she wrote it, and she said, you know, I had writer's block. I wanted to create the textures I see in this painting. She loved it because of the blues, but there's no story in this. It's purely abstract. It's purely what it's going to make you feel inside, and she wanted to create that feeling. So you're going to hear about 13,000 open E string quarter notes, and she named it The Only Way Through is Slow. did have to write down a number so I knew how many there were. She was here in San Francisco a few weeks ago for a song festival at the Conservatory of Music. And we got together and we went to the artist studio at Hunters Point. And we had a great time. And I played it for her, and she really complained a lot. Basically, she kept saying slower, slower, quieter, slower, quieter. No momentum. Don't let it lead anywhere. Don't give away anything. Slower, slower, slower. She wants to be paid by the minute, too. But, now I have a piece that when I played it for the composer, he kept saying, louder, faster, scratchier, scratchier. This is by Jose Gonzalez Granero. He's the principal clarinetist of the San Francisco Opera Orchestra. He is from Spain. He's been here nearly 20 years now. He came to go to Juilliard, and I played with him in the opera. And he chose this painting by Robert Antoine Pinchon, who is part of the Rouen School in Normandy. He studied with Laborde, the guy who did the Notre Dame painting, and he was the teacher of Mallet, the guy who did the snowy sunset scene. This is the Grand Place in Brussels, and that's what it's called, the Grand Place in Brussels in the rain. Now, here's another piece that sounds absolutely nothing like what the painting looks like. It's just, they're completely different. What Jose's thinking of is there's a gypsy fiddler somewhere in this square playing with his case open for money. And from what I can tell, he's got some emotional problems. So this is called Cadenza 2 by Jose Gonzalez Granero. And it's the last piece on the program, except for the encore, which you guys get to hear about. And we'll get there in a second. Ideas about the programming order, ideas about the things I say about it, I'm all ears. Don't forget to sign up for the emails. They'll let you know when I'm performing these concerts. It's going to happen a bunch of times in the area. If you can, please donate. Like I said, there's a tax deduction. $10 helps. 10,000 helps. If everybody here gave $10, that would be half my plane ticket to Carnegie Hall. You know, that's sort of the way I look at it. So here's the encore. Here's another piece that I wrote. And the reason why it's the encore is because it's already been performed. I've performed it a bunch of times already. And every piece on the official program is a world premiere at Carnegie Hall. So that's why this is the encore. So this is a painting by Jean-Francois Raffaelli. He was in the Impressionist exhibits. He was invited by his friend Degas to be in the 4th exhibit, and Monet threw a fit because he wasn't a true Impressionist. He was a realist. He didn't subscribe to their beliefs. So Monet pouted and stayed home for that exhibit. That was the only one he wasn't part of. And Raffaelli goes in there with 37 paintings and totally dominates it. You can see one of his paintings at the Legion of Honor. In that last room, there are a bunch of guys sitting around drinking absinthe looking depressed. That's Raffaelli. Now, you look at this and you're like, that's not realist, that's Impressionist. Well, yes. From 1896, he sort of caught the bug a little bit late in life. But he really is known as a realist. Recently, I saw an etching come up for sale by Raffaelli, and the left half of the etching was exactly this image, and the right half, right here, was Notre Dame Cathedral. So I finally know what street this is. And, you know, I'm recording all these pieces at Hertz Hall. About 12 of them are going to go on the album, but all of them are going to go up on YouTube, where you see the painting, you see me play, and when possible, I go do it I take a video of me in the location. So when I go to France, I'm going to stand right there and mime along. I'm going to do it in the Grand Plaza in Brussels. I'm going to do it behind Notre Dame Cathedral. The Monterey Sentinels, that should be easy. Just find some trees in Monterey. I have 2 etchings by Raffaelli right here. You're welcome to come and take a look afterwards. To help pay for this enormous project, I am selling a lot of my art collection. So if any of these interest you, let me know. I have other stuff too. Okay, here is an animated street in autumn, inspired by an animated street in autumn.